Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University, with undergraduate and graduate programs part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. Earlier this month, the Greater St. Louis Association of Black Journalists honored two men who have been informing St. Louisans for decades. The St. Louis American's photojournalist Wiley Price has been at it for 45 years. Five on Your Side television anchor Art Holliday is observing 40 years at the station. That's almost a century of experience and service to the community between them. The two received Living Legends Awards from the Black Journalist Organization. I'm happy to welcome them to our studio. Gentlemen, congratulations. Nice to see you, and a very nice honor for both of you, and well-deserved.
Good afternoon, Don. How are you?
I'm doing just
Thank
great.
You,
Wiley, let me start with you. 46 years, and maybe even a little bit more than that.
And I got to correct you. It's more like 38.
Really?
Yes, 38. It's not 45.
Well, you have to check with the folks at the American then, because I think they put 38. Or maybe you just wish it was 38.
I do. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. But it's been an interesting journey for me coming into a paper that should have been closing as opposed to trying to stay open. Because back in 1979, most black newspapers were closing down across the country, and the American decided under Dr. Suggs that we should stay open, that we had something to actually say.
And it's been honored very pointedly for its service on many occasions.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
And when I started there, people were asking me, why are you going to something? It's like you bought a ticket to be on the boat, the wrong boat. So, but, you know, the journey is long and hard, but it's worth it. It really is. I don't regret one day that I've spent at the American, because I've always shot something that was meaningful.
Well, we want to talk more specifically about that journey, and will. Art, 40 years, that's got to be some kind of a record in St. Louis.
I know Betsy Bruce made it to 46. So I'm not at the I'm on the short list of longest serving people in St. Louis, but that boggles the mind too. But yeah, next year is my 40th year at KSDK.
Wow. How has it changed in those 40 years? Think back to what it was like when you started.
I mean, there have been so many changes. I mean, in this business, the basics generally stay the same. You have to be prepared. You have to be inquisitive, ask the right question, ask the right follow-up question, that sort of thing. The technology has changed tremendously. When I learned how to shoot, it was on 16-millimeter film. Mm-hmm. Now everything is digital. Now you can go live with, small self-contained live units. You used to have a truck. Now you carry something that's basically the size of a small suitcase, and you can pretty much go live from anywhere if you have a signal. The nature of the public's opinion of journalists has evolved. Now we're the enemy of the people.
Yes. Fake news.
It didn't used to be that way.
Yeah.
And, there was a time when thoughtful journalism was treasured and revered. And now if you're a journalist, sometimes you have a target on your back. So that's a change that is not for the better.
Yeah. How about you, Wiley? I mean, obviously technology has changed what you do to a certain degree.
A huge degree.
Yeah.
Once I walked out of the dark room into the digital age, I really felt like I was living in the future, because to be in a closed room in the dark for 10, 15 minutes and then come out with a print, that takes a minute. And when you're fast at it, you can do it in about 20 minutes. But with digital, you can stay in the same room with the person. You just shot him. And this happened to me several times where we needed a headshot of someone. I went and shot it. And while they were talking to me, I'm already feeding it back to whoever needs it. And that has put every weekly and monthly publication right on the front door of what's new in news right now.
Art just alluded to the fact that journalists these days are sometimes considered the enemy of the people. At least some high-ranking officials have put it that way. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that? Do you feel that you've got that target on your back when you're out?
No, I don't, because I used to have that target on my back 30 years ago, and Art and I were talking about that. When I first started at The American, with papers closing down like they were in the late 70s, early 80s, African-Americans weren't used to having their picture taken at what you would call a normal event. So people look at me like, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you taking my picture? And often I would have to convince them to let me run this picture in the publication, because African Americans naturally were suspicious of anything where what they're doing is being documented. Mm-hmm. Why did you pick me? So now, fast forward 30 years later, 40 years later, it's a whole other ballgame for me. When I walk into a room, I'm welcomed, as opposed to 40 years ago when I walked into a room and people were like, what do you want? So,
is that you, or have times changed? What
times have changed for the industry overall, but for me personally, it was a great change, because people were used to seeing me, and I didn't realize until years later when my mother said to me, "It's easier for you now because people trust you. They've seen enough of your work. They see you everywhere. They know that you're okay." And she's right. I even get that from the police department sometimes. I might be at a shooting, and one police officer will shoot me away, and the other will go, no, it's okay. We know him. Mm-hmm. So, it's just time has healed all wounds, so to speak, of trying to get the job done. For me, it's very easy. I rarely walk into a place and somebody doesn't recognize me.
Art, you have stories like that?
Well, when you spend as much time as I have in one market, it's rare that I don't have encounters with the public. It's just it's part of the deal. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, 99% of my interaction with the public is pretty positive. There's still a handful of people who remember me from my sports days. Many people woke up with me and Jennifer Blome for 22 years when we were doing Today in St. Louis. Now I'm out on the street doing I'm on our storytellers unit, which basically means I get to go out and find interesting people doing interesting things. Probably not unlike many of the interviews that you do. Just trying to. I see my current role as trying to counteract the perception that St. Louis is a horrible place to live. Mm-hmm. There are great things going on in St. Louis every day, and I get to go out and tell some of those stories.
I wanted to bring this up. You just alluded to it, the days when you were doing sports. I was really disappointed when you stopped doing that and moved over to the news side, because I thought you were the best sports guy in town. I mean, you did the best features of anybody in town, and I was disappointed.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, Don, and in 1989, when I got called to the third floor to the general manager's office, I had no intention of leaving sports. I was happy. In fact, my goal was, if I stayed at KSDK long enough, that maybe one day I'd be news director. Of course, the very talented Mike Bush crushed that dream, but that's okay. And he says, we're going to make some changes on our morning show, and I think you'd be a good co-anchor for Jennifer Blome. And I was afraid to say no, because this particular general manager, if you got on his list, you were dead man walking. Right. I didn't want to be on his list. And he saw something in me that I certainly hadn't really even thought of. And, so I don't regret it. I mean, that was an amazing partnership that, will always be part of my television legacy.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary partnership. I mean, I think everyone who is familiar with your time with Jennifer would have to say the same thing. Wiley, you're nodding your head over there. You're agreeing. What did you think about his move from sports to news?
I was disappointed also.
Yeah.
'Cause I thought, he's doing such a wonderful job in this department, and you had notoriety. You really did. And so, sometimes changes come and they look bleak, and you don't realize you just walked into an oasis.
Yeah. A door opens and, don't know what's on the other side, so you walk through it. Just to stay with this subject for a moment, Art, why have so many sports figures in television moved over to the news side? I mean, Renee Knott has done it at your station. Mark Curtis, who was with Channel 2 for a while, did it. Steve Savard did it. And Brent Musburger did it going back a few years on the national level. Why? Why these changes, do you think?
I think everyone has their own journey. And I think the question would probably be better asked of the people who are making those decisions. I don't know that any of us were actively seeking it, but I haven't had an extended conversation with Mike Bush. Maybe that was his goal. I don't know. We've never really talked about it. I suspect that part of it is when you do sports, you have to have energy. You have to be a good communicator. All the general things that go into having a lengthy career. You frequently ad lib, which is another skill. And I think in all of the cases that you mentioned specifically, they'd already built an audience. And I think that was part of it, too. I don't necessarily think that, every news director is thinking, oh, my weekend sportscaster, I'm going to groom him to be a newscaster. I don't know that. I still wonder what Bill Bolster, the general manager at the time, what he saw in me, because we never had that conversation, except in general terms. He said, I think you and Jennifer Blome would be a good team. Okay. Well, he was right.
We should also point out that sports is sports and news is news, except sports is also news.
Of course it is.
It's really the same thing. It's just covering a different element. Yeah.
Well, I was worried that people wouldn't accept me in the new role because you don't know. I don't have a big ego, so I'm not thinking I'm going to set the world on fire. I'm thinking, I was pretty comfortable doing what I was doing, reporting on, the Cardinals and the Blues. And, we even had the football Cardinals at the time before they absconded to the desert. But in looking back at my career, I'm proud of the fact that I have reinvented myself multiple times. I was, because people ask you all the time, don't you miss this or don't you miss that? And the business is too fast to be looking in the rearview mirror. You've got to be in the moment because you've got a job right now. But on occasions like this, when you're asked to reflect, that's the thing that, if you're going to talk about someone's career and body of work, I was able to do enough things that they couldn't figure out how to get rid of me.
Well, 40 years. Wow. That's, again, very impressive. Wiley, when you look back over your 38 years, what do you see? What pops into your mind? What are some of the things that most impressed you about what you do and how you did it?
What most impresses me is the fact that I stayed. When you're young, you're getting advice from older people in the business, and they're all telling you, don't stay at an African-American newspaper because there's nothing there for you. And something just kept telling me, no, I need to stay. And the reason why, because that's where I started. And when you think you know a community, you quickly realize, especially when you're young, that you don't. So when I was trying to leave, I was also trying to figure out how does all of this work for the African-American community in St. Louis? Because I was going to these different assignments. And when I say different, I might be shooting a press conference with an alderman, and next thing you know, I'm over at HUD shooting people that need food. And growing up, you forget that there are people out there with needs like that. And so with me shooting it, it started reminding me of all the magazines I had seen of these kind of programs being shot someplace else. And I thought, well, this is important. African Americans need to see this. They need to see the positives that are coming from it, and everybody needs to know this. So I stayed. And as far into the 80s, people kept telling me, you need to get out of there so that you can really do something meaningful with your career. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm shooting an entire race of people trying to advance themselves into the future. What could be more important than that? So I kept to the point where I just thought, okay, I got to stop listening to these folks and just do what I do. And a couple of photographers did say that to me. If this is what you need to do, you need to put your head down and go do it and don't listen to the outside folks.
And it's your hometown.
St. Louis.
Yeah, it's your hometown. That makes a difference too.
And again, that also drove the picture home to me. The point was, you're 24 and you don't know how we operate in this city, and that was kind of shocking to me because you grow up thinking, oh, I know where all the high schools are, I know who the people are, and really you don't. I remember the first time I saw Congressman Clay. He walked into this room, and I knew he was going to be there, and I thought, I've only seen this guy on TV, and here he is 20 feet in front of me. And the rest of my life would be that way, where the first time I meet somebody of note, and I'm here to work this person for whatever reason. And life for me has been extremely exciting staying in this community. And I would debate with anyone that comes from the New York Times, L.A., wherever. your career has not been as meaningful as mine because you've been just shooting the assignments as they come to you, where all my assignments are based in the African-American community, right where the work should be done, for me anyway.
Art, you're a hometown kid.
I am.
How does that help you and affect you in your work, do you think?
Well, especially now that, you worked there 20 years and then the next anniversary is 30 and now I'm approaching 40. I've always considered it an honor to work in my hometown. It certainly wasn't any master plan on my part to work at KSDK this long. It's worked out, and I know I've gotten something out of it. I believe the television station's gotten something out of it, and hopefully the community's got something out of it. I love telling St. Louis stories. There's no shortage of them, and it's been a joy, to pick up on something that Wiley said earlier. This is the kind of business where, every business has its frustrations, and newsrooms are, can quickly turn into a bitch fest. I'm not, people complaining. Yes. But every day is different, and you don't know necessarily who you're going to meet or what situation you're going to be in or what story you're going to cover or what the impact of that story is going to be. And I never wake up and say, I got to go to the newsroom today. Never.
Yeah. You can be covering a 5-alarm fire in the morning and be in the governor's office that afternoon. It just shifts around like that day to day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I learn something every day. How many people have a job where they're guaranteed to learn something they didn't know when they woke up that morning? Right. And this is every day in this business.
Could you imagine, Wiley, getting up every day and your task for the day was going to be to screw a bumper on a Chevrolet and do it for 8 hours and come back the next day and the next?
I would really like auto mechanics to be thinking that every morning that I got up. Yeah. Because even if people say that to me, what is your motivation? I said that I wake up every day, I walk into the African-American community and go, okay, what's next? Because there's going to be something. Art just asked me just a couple of minutes ago, am I just coming on? And I said to him, I've already shot a fire.
Really?
It's not even noon yet. And the emotional roller coaster for our job is just tremendous. I remember a few years ago when we had this run of kids missing, and one of the TV reporters from one of the stations said, we've had so many children missing lately. I had to ask my news director to please give this story to someone else because this was going to be my third one in like 5 months. And I was like, our job is just like that, where you have no idea what you're going to walk into when you get to work that morning.
Well, as journalists and as hometowners, let me put this one to you, and Wiley, I'll start with you. Ferguson. What did that mean to you, and what was the impact of Ferguson on you as a member of the community and as a journalist?
I always knew something like Ferguson was coming, but like I tell everyone, nobody knows where it's going to happen or when. You just know it's coming. And I say that because one day a person explained to me what the workhouse was really for. And I was like, that's why there's people in the workhouse? Because they couldn't pay the bail? He said, yeah, they are literally sitting there waiting for $300. And they've been there for 9 months. Well, in a debtor's prison, and the taxpayers pay for this, who profits from this? So it's things like that. And a lot of good has already come out of Ferguson because of the death of Mike Brown. Mm-hmm. The debtors' prisons are on their way out. We've definitely had a change in traffic violations moving through small municipalities. All of my professional career, when I've had to go to somewhere towards North County, I've always planned the path that I take because police are sitting on the roads waiting for to come by. And when you're chasing a news story, all of us are driving a little bit above the speed limit. So I have given municipalities probably about $2,000 or $3,000 of my money over the 30 or 40 years I've been doing this. And again, Ferguson stopped that. Now, when you look around, where people are driving on expired tags, they're not afraid of being pulled over. That has really settled down for the betterment of the community. Yeah. I don't think you should be able to drive through your community knowing you're going to be pulled over by the very police department you pay for a traffic violation and then be taken to jail for it. I don't think anybody should go to jail over traffic violations.
Art, a lot of people in the white community were surprised by all of this, but did you see it happening as well?
I would put it this way. It didn't surprise me. This was a powder keg waiting to be lit.
Yes.
Many of the issues that were exposed because of that fateful interaction between a police officer and a teenager, they had been festering for decades. I mean, we're talking about many of the same issues now that we were talking about in the 50s and the 60s. So I don't think very few people in the black community were surprised. But I spoke to some white Florissant residents, and they admitted that, I was just leading my life. I wasn't paying attention. I should have known more. I should have done more. And so there was this moment where many people who, in the category that you described, surprised, quote unquote, I think the phrase now is woke.
Woke is right, yeah.
They became painfully aware of things going on in their community that maybe they hadn't paid attention to before. And I think for some people, and it's always dangerous to generalize, but for the purposes of this discussion, I think there are probably people in the metropolitan area who don't live anywhere near Ferguson who didn't think that it affected them, and nothing could be further from the truth.
I remember hearing some people at the time of the Michael Brown shooting, shortly after, saying, why can't we just return to the good old days of the 50s and the 60s? And people like you would be saying, those weren't good old. There's nothing good about those days.
Good for who?
Yeah. Did you get any of that, Wiley?
Oh, sure. And, it's easy to live your life with blinders. It truly is. But when you are woke, as you say, it allows you to wake up every day knowing that we can do some improvement across the board for our community as a whole. And Ferguson was a good spark for us. Now everybody is woke. I mean, look, we had a Quick Trip burned down just 4 short years ago. There's a whole nother facility standing there that fights everything that burning stood for. And now we're in a recovery stage that's going to take a minute, but there's no going back to the way things used to be. I mean, this is not going to stop, and then we're going to suddenly fall back. No, there's no falling back. And if you're not on board now, well, it's going to be a rough ride for you.
But the Michael Brown shooting didn't end it. I mean, how many cases have there been since Ferguson, just a little over 4 years ago?
Yes.
I mean, every week we're reading another story like that. There's a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the understatement of the year,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what's in your immediate future, aside from another 40 years at KSDK, Art Holliday?
Well, I guarantee you, if we're sitting here 40 years from now talking about my career,
I know.
It'll be a miracle.
Our time is winding down, but I know you've been active in the documentary field. You've worked on a couple of things. Is anything cooking along those lines in 30 seconds?
Well, I'm still, many of your listeners may be aware that I've been working for quite some time on a documentary about Johnny Johnson, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer who was Chuck Berry's piano player. I guess this is probably the first time that I've mentioned this, but John Goodman has just come on as a narrator and is going to be coming into town in a couple of weeks to do some narration for the project. And, the biggest issue is the copyrighted material, and I'm still trying to solve that. But it's a pretty good film.
Good luck with that, and having Goodman isn't going to hurt your prospects at all.
No.
Wiley, very quickly, anything cooking with you?
No, we have the Salute to Excellence in Business this Friday. We'll be honoring businessmen from across the city.
All righty. Well, again, congratulations for your honor from the Association of Black Journalists. Great to see you guys. Keep up the good work. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.